And rolling in with mini-series number 3, part of the Household Brawl mini-series in between Season 1 and Season 2. Welcome back. I am your co-host, Austin Fugelstad, at Uncle Mike on Twitter. I am joined by my left-hand man, but taking the right-hand man's place for now, Blake Hanatho. Follow him on Twitter, at Blake Hanatho. And we've got, finally, after many, many weeks of long hiatus, our favorite reoccurring guest on the House Hall Brawl podcast, Robert Schmitz. Follow him on Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz. Rob, how are you doing? How's it feel to be back? We are happy to have you.
Well, it's a complicated question, that's for sure. I'm stoked to be back on Halas Hall Brawl, but I am just climbing out of the really nasty end of what I think is mono. I've had it before, so it's definitely my second tour of duty here, but it sure puts you down, and I'm happy to be back. Watched the games this weekend. So much fun stuff to talk about. Football is hitting its apex point here. The Senior Bowl's starting. I don't know about you guys. I love the season, but especially as soon as I started covering the Bears, I really got obsessed with the offseason. As we set for offseason number 2 of my personal experience, I'm really excited to get to work on just a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we were talking before the show, but Rob, when he joined, you'll see it on YouTube right away. But when Rob joined, he had that Jay Cutler jersey on, and we were all like, let's go. Rob, explain to the listeners what's the point of the Cutler jersey tonight?
So I'll tell you straight up that the Cutler jersey is the Bears jersey that I wear. And the complicated part about it is that when I wear it, the Bears usually lose. So it's a jersey that I wear sparingly because I've constantly tried to de-curse it. But I can tell you plenty of games. Like last year, week 1, you better believe I wore it. And I did not wear it again until the Rams game. And so I didn't wear it during the Philly game. I just didn't. And then I started, especially as the Bears season tailed away here in 2019, I started to wear it more often. I think it went 500. But I just stopped buying jerseys there for a little while because I know I graduated school. Money became a little bit tighter. And Austin talked about inauthentic jerseys, which may be something I'll need to look into because this is authentic. Usually the jerseys I buy are authentic. And gosh, they are expensive.
Yeah.
They're not NHL sweaters, and that is a different conversation.
Yeah.
But they are expensive. So I sit here, I roll with Jay because whether Bears fans like it or not, and I'm not even saying it is a positive, Jay Cutler is and will be a famous Bear for the next probably 50 years.
Yeah.
So he's
Cuddy
not
does it.
it's not a wrong choice. And I figured as I was jumping on House Hall Brawl, it was just the right thing to have on.
Fitting to have that Jay Cutler jersey on. Now, Rob, we haven't talked to you for yeah, absolutely. Rob, we haven't talked to you in a little bit. So can we get your thoughts on before we get into the playoffs? Just give us your thoughts at the end of this Bears season.
Well, it's complicated because we all set different goalposts at the start of the year. Mine was win a playoff game. We didn't make the playoffs, so it's unequivocally a disappointment, and I need to talk to Windy City Gridiron's lead historian, Jack Silverstein. If you know him, if you don't, he's great. He does fabulous work. I would guess that this had to rank in the top 5 at minimum of most disappointing Bears seasons ever, given the just crazy hype. I mean, we talked about it before the start of the season. Mitch was throwing for minimum 4,000 yards, according to everyone. Like, our guys said it. I said it. You guys said it. We all thought Mitch had that step in him. It didn't happen. And I'm not sitting here trying to say that it was all on the quarterback. I don't have enough time to dissect the whole Bears season in this answer to one question, but suffice to say it was disappointing. There's blame absolutely everywhere. It seemed like everybody took a step back, whether injury or just poor play. There's so much blame to go around that it's starting to settle on random targets. For instance, I think Matt Nagy takes way more criticism than he should take, but that may be a discussion for another time. The point is, there's so much disappointment that people are looking for places to put it, and it's just going everywhere. Overall, it's not a backbreaker. The Bears could put this back together, and they're not on the way to 6-10. Certainly, we hope not. But 8-8 was not what we set out wanting to see, and so, I mean, it's what we got. It wasn't great.
Who disappointed you the most?
I would say Trubisky, and it's not because I hate the guy. I know that for some reason it's
Yeah,
become
we don't hate him. We
yeah,
just are very like he's not good right now.
it's
He's just
become
He
not
was
a
the
good.
really
second overall pick.
it's
Like
be,
he's just not
Have
living up to.
expectations.
exactly. It's become a really popular thing to say that if you like don't like Trubisky's play at quarterback, that you hate the man. By
Yeah.
all accounts, he's a stand-up dude, really nice and a great teammate. But from everything I watched, I mean, you want to talk about statistics, almost every single Andy Reid style quarterback, and believe it or not, Matt Nagy runs an Andy Reid style offense, takes a jump in their second year. By every big data account, by the third year of a quarterback's career, you should know who they are in almost all cases. I know we keep hearing quarterback development isn't linear, but according to big data, that's just not normally the case. And then you look at the eye test and you see that Mitchell Trubisky goes at random from looking like he has a seemingly clear idea of what he's doing, and usually it's on very simple plays like those zone hitch routes that we saw the Bears run all the time. But more often than not, and I'm sure y'all got this impression, you could see Mitch having no idea what he was doing. Whether it was a predetermined thing that he decided to throw into double coverage anyways, like that week 16 throw he had over the middle to Wims, or plenty of stuff from week 1, bad reads. I mean, we're talking single man reads, like RPOs, zone reads. They became 50-50 whether Trubisky would make the right read. At the end of the NFL level, you can't have that. And we could talk about plenty of people. Charles Leno took a bit of a step back, and I only say his name not because he was the worst defender, but because I've been staring at him a lot. The team in general took a step back. Khalil Mack didn't perform as well as I wanted him to, though I actually like y'all's theory that he was hurt. It makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, we thought Trubisky would be a shoo-in for a 4,000-yard season, and at the end of the year, he did not put that up. And he was a large part of the reason the Bears weren't able to score. It's hard to pick anybody else, guys.
Yeah, it's tough, and you know, like you mentioned, we did talk about it a while ago about Khalil Mack's production, and during the time it was blasphemy if you criticize Khalil Mack, but now it seems like he does have a back and neck injury, and obviously he's sitting out of the Pro Bowl because of it. And again, real quick, just Blake, what do you think about that, and kind of what we were talking about months ago with Khalil Mack?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to think of the whole situation, because if he was playing injured throughout the entire year, why didn't he show up on the injury report at all? I think that's a real question that has to be asked, because, I mean, it's required by NFL teams that they disclose these injuries, and I'm pretty sure teams have gotten punished with fines, and I don't know about loss of draft pick. I don't know if anything like that's happened, but there's been some pretty significant fines for that kind of stuff. So, if he is injured, then, focus on getting him healthy, getting him right for 2020, but at the same time, it's a little troubling that nobody heard anything about it, and now it's kind of being used as an excuse. And again, they could just be saying he's got general soreness or something, and that's why he doesn't want to go to the Pro Bowl. I mean, you see guys skip out on the Pro Bowl every single year nowadays. I mean, Trubisky was a third alternate last year, and he made it to the Pro Bowl. So I mean, it's the main guys just aren't really interested in playing in that, and that might be the reason why. It might just be just wear and tear of an NFL season. It might not be a serious injury, but it definitely would make sense considering the lack of production from Mac.
And
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if anyone sheds more light on this subject, because this is something that people aren't talking enough about. I think this needs to be disclosed if they're going to say he was injured the whole season. Rob, what were you going to say?
One thing that I'll point out, I remember I read a piece, I think it was a video interview, as a matter of fact, by Allen Robinson last season. And one thing he talked about is by the end of the NFL season, pretty much everybody's hurt. It's just a matter of how hurt are you. So, Blake, I hear you. It very well could be an excuse. Let's be honest, guys. Khalil Mack would take the Pro Bowl off and list a sunburn if that was allowed. Like, he doesn't have any interest in playing in that game. That's okay. So, how serious is this neck injury and whatnot? Who really knows? Because like you're saying, Blake, it's hard to escape the fact that Mack did not have a very productive season. At the same time, criticizing Mac, I'm not usually somebody who would say something like this, but criticizing Mac with how large his contract is, he is so assuredly on the roster next year that at a certain point you shrug your shoulders and you say, well, that wasn't good. Next year should be better, and that's all there is to say.
Yeah.
Because you're saying,
can't do anything about it.
Exactly. There is so little you could possibly do about Khalil Mack. guys, we're not trading him. Like, there's no
Mr.
way.
Trubisky, Khalil Mack for Joe Burrow, make it happen.
Oh man,
Oh.
that would be such a steal. It's ridiculous.
I actually think so too. And then you go sign a free agent. Man, we can get into this another day, but you sign a free agent edge and you got Burrow and still a really talented defense.
Bring me back. We can talk team theory team building theory all day long, but this is a mini series, not an hour and a half.
It's true. We'll do that another time. We'll have a segment when we start season 2. We'll talk about all these different theories. But all right, guys, let's move into the playoffs here. Crazy events so far. The Eagles lose Carson Wentz, and McCown almost brings him back. You have the Seahawks almost Russell Wilson literally putting the team on his back, but coming up short against the Packers. The Packers getting exposed. The Chiefs coming back twice. Mahomes, it has been called the greatest comeback QB of all time, or some have been able to do that. So, what are your overall thoughts of the playoffs so far? And before we start getting into the Super Bowl game. But yeah, what are your thoughts? It's just been crazy. Rob, we'll start with you.
Well, go ahead, Blake. I'll let you go.
Go ahead, Blake.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say I'm kind of bummed out because I kind of missed the Titans run a little bit because I was on vacation in Florida during the wild card and divisional round, and I actually got the flu while I was in Florida, and I was struggling, dude. So I was pretty much bedridden, and during that Titans-Patriots game, I fell asleep, I want to say, with like 10 minutes left in the second quarter. And the Patriots, I think, were still up at the time. And then I woke up, and it was like late in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then the same exact thing happened in the Ravens game where I fell asleep. It was halftime. It was still kind of close then. I woke up then, and all of a sudden there's 5 minutes left in the game, and the Titans are up 26-12. And I'm like, oh, I guess the Titans are really going to do this again. So, and then finally I got to watch them against the Chiefs, and they weren't quite the same team, but what a run from those guys. Mike Vrabel.
Blake, you should have fallen asleep again. That's the reason they lost.
Dude, honestly, I should have. It's because it was during the day, dude. The other games were at night, and I just cashed out.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Okay,
man,
so
I cannot keep eyes open.
To jump in, I'll talk about another team. I love the Chiefs. And a lot of the reason that I love the Chiefs is because Patrick Mahomes is just amazing. He's a beautiful quarterback to watch. And I need to make this absurdly clear. Chicago fans, a lot of the reason that we love Trubisky or loved Trubisky is because of what he could do. The top end plays that Trubisky can make are really, really talented. The crazy thing about Mahomes is that not only does he have that talent to just make some jaw-dropping plays, like in last week's game against the Titans, he had that step-back 40-yard dart for a touchdown. But it's the fact that on every other down, he's moving in the pocket consistently. He throws balls away that need to be thrown away. He runs where there's a running lane. He throws to open receivers, and he completes those with velocity on target. What makes Patrick Mahomes so amazing is that he is consistently the best quarterback he can be, and he doesn't have to break out that I'm Brett Favre amazing aspect near as often as you'd think, because he's just able to be that consistent Alex Smith quarterback that runs the offense. So watching them in these games look, guys, let's be really honest. If you told me that Andy Reid spotted Houston 24 points and spotted the Titans 10 points just to make those games interesting, I'd almost believe you. The way the Chiefs just came alive. And I'm saying that not as a conspiracy theorist. I'm saying that because the way the Chiefs offense would just turn it on and become unstoppable was something beautiful to watch. It's what keeps me as hopeful as I am about Matt Nagy, is because that's the offense that he's trying to emulate. Matt Nagy is as close to a true clone of Andy Reid as I've ever seen, even down to the quirky game management. So watching the Chiefs, it's been a great time. I think it's kind of funny because a lot of people are starting to talk about Aaron Rodgers and playoff losses. And guys, if we really think about it, Aaron Rodgers has sort of made a career in the playoffs about playing either 1 or 2 games at old school Aaron Rodgers, I'm just going to beat you level, and then he evaporates in a loss. It happens. And I'm not trying to call the guy out. I'm not trying to pretend he's bad. I think he's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But the way that we saw him do this was exactly the same as when the Seahawks, right after Aaron Rodgers had beat Dallas on that crazy throw to Jermichael Finley. If you remember, the Seahawks turned it over 5 times and still beat the Packers. This is sort of what they've done. But I'm more than anything, I guess I'm just happy the Packers aren't in the Super Bowl. Been a wild playoff so far, though.
Yeah, I think a lot
and
of
those former Bears scoring all the points against them too.
Yeah,
Raheem
Mostert and Robbie Gold.
Here for life.
So let's move into that Super Bowl, Blake, right into it. I mean, we saw what the Niners were able to do against the Packers. It was nothing short of incredible. Jimmy G threw the ball 6 times. He threw 6 completions. He was 6 for 8. Raheem Mostert had, I think, 220 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, this was insane. This is at will. You could they hand the ball off 11 times in a row at one point. And then on the other side, you saw the Chiefs go down early twice by 10 points, and then they come back like they always do and win. You just get a sense that no matter what the score is at the end of the first quarter, by halftime, you have a feeling the Chiefs are going to win the game. It's incredible what they're able to do. So, Blake, we have this matchup of 2 absolutely incredible teams through the entire regular season and playoffs. How are you feeling about the Super Bowl, and what's your score prediction?
Well, I'm super excited. I wasn't expecting to do a score prediction. Yeah, you're gonna have to come back to me on that.
Score prediction next week. I'm gonna get Rob.
All right, yeah, let's do a full-on preview next week. I think that would be
Yeah.
The right move. But yeah, dude, I'm amped for the Super Bowl, man. I mean, as long as the Packers weren't in, that's kind of what my mindset was going into championship weekend. And they got absolutely destroyed, and I enjoyed every single second of it. And the 49ers and the Chiefs, they're kind of like opposite teams, I feel like. Because,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo threw 8 passes in that NFC championship game. And I mean, the Chiefs it's been their bread and butter to throw deep for the last 2 years, you know?
They score a ton of points. It's just extremely different how they do it.
Right, exactly. So I'm really, really excited for this one. I don't really know who to root for yet because the Chiefs were my Super Bowl pick. But at the same time, Jimmy Garoppolo from Rolling Meadows High School, shout out the northwest suburbs up here. But we played. I didn't play
great,
Jimmy
baby.
G, but we played Rolling Meadows was in our conference for football. My cousin actually sacked Jimmy G back in the day. Shout out Josh Davis.
Wow.
So it's going to be a really fun one. I'm super excited. You know, as magical as the Titans run was, I don't think that would have been the sexiest Super Bowl matchup or AFC representative. I think it's probably better for the NFL for the Chiefs to get there just because, you know, Pat Mahomes is like looking like the next legend of the game, and to get him a Super Bowl this early on in his legacy would be unbelievable. And then you talk about Andy Reid, a guy who's been to one Super Bowl, been to a bunch of conference championship games, but has never been able to win the big one. And now he has another really good chance here, probably his best chance yet. And to win one hit for him, that would definitely solidify his legacy as probably one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. If he might already be one, but, you know, obviously with the Super Bowl, that changes everything.
Yeah, and you know, like Blake said, we're going to dive into a little more next weekend, but it is kind of funny because fans kind of sometimes use coaches as tiebreakers. Like, I like this coach way better than I like this coach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You can't really say that for this one.
Yeah.
You're like, I love Andy Reid. He hasn't ever read. I want him to win. But then you're like, wait, Kyle Shanahan's kind of the man. Like, he's really smart. He's young. It would be really cool to see a really young guy get a ring this early in his career. It's tough, man. It is tough. So, Rob, what's your take on the Super Bowl here? And if you want, give us a score prediction.
So, look, it's complicated because the beautiful thing about this Super Bowl is that we have 2 fabulous offenses. One is a really well-schemed running game that has a nice passing attack buoying it. That's the 49ers, if you didn't figure that out. And the other has, I think, just like there's magic in this Chiefs offense. Not only do you have one of the most dangerous down-to-down quarterbacks operating it, but I also think Tyreek Hill is an old-school game breaker. I try not to throw that word out when describing too many people, but Hill is so fast. You've seen some of the best of the game just get run by, and Mahomes has the arm to get it to him. Not to mention with other weapons like Sammy Watkins, who on plenty of other teams is at minimum a number 2 wide receiver, if not a number 1. On this team, he's a number 3 receiver. I haven't even talked about Kelsey. Like, it's hard to doubt them. So then what do you look at? You look at defenses. San Fran obviously has, I think anyways, the better defense. They've got playmakers all over the place. The Chiefs defense, it's got players like Frank Clark. I would say it holds water. It did its job against Tennessee. Like you're talking about, Blake, it's interesting. You mentioned the Tennessee Titans. I thought they had the better defense. I expected them to do better, frankly, against the Chiefs. And that's why, at the end of the day, if I'm going score prediction, I'm pretty confident that San Fran's going to score in the neighborhood of 27 points. 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals feels about right. And based on the way the Chiefs have played, I'll just take them at 31-27. I could be wrong. They could come out and San Fran could shut the door because I've already said that I think that they've got the better defense. They are the more balanced team. But I can't pick against Mahomes in this Chiefs offense right now. I just can't. The guy's so mobile. He's so dangerous. His receivers are so good, and they punish. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw this, when they turned it on against Tennessee, they cut through them like butter. I mean, it's something else when that Chiefs offense gets in gear. And I think that if I had to pick one team to grind out 4 touchdowns, I have to pick the Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Chiefs have been one of the better defenses in the NFL, too, to close out the season into the playoffs. So it's going to be a battle of just some really good teams. I mean, it's going to be who studies more, who prepares harder, who's the better coach team. It's going to be awesome. We're excited for it. And we'll talk more about it next week. So let's move into the last part here. We're going to talk about Bears offseason. That's our main section of the show here. We're going to talk about some glaring holes, how to fill them, and what our outlook is moving into the season, and of course, what better way to do that than with our boy Rob. So let's get into it, Rob. What do you think just initially some holes that need to be filled are with cuts, with weaknesses, this offseason?
So the most glaring hole, besides quarterback, which is its own special little position, we'll just set that off to the side, is right guard. Based on the way that Kyle Long played this season, we never had one. And when Rashad Coward stepped in, he didn't fill the shoes well either. By the time we finally got Ted Larson in, Montgomery was able to grind out a couple of really nice runs against Kansas City, but it was too little too late, and nobody has ever tried to say that Ted Larson is a starting right guard. That's a position that if we just got that, you're going to see this whole line take a nice step forward. I'm not even super sold on James Daniels being a special player, but I think Charles Leno is a reliable left tackle. Cody Whitehair, whether he's center or guard, reliable at his position, even a little more than that. Bobby Massey needs to get his stuff back together, but his contract says it's hard to replace. Not to mention tackle's just a hard position to replace anyways. But anyways, I'm getting off track. The point is that if it's me, the Bears need better tight ends, especially in that receiving tight end role. I believe that they had less than 100 yards total as a tight end group, and that's just. It doesn't matter if we had Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I think Holtz had 99 yards. I think the leading score had under 100. Yeah,
none of them broke 100 yards.
Yes,
but we could have any quarterback in the league, and that needs to get better. And look, I don't mean this against Jesper Horsted, but I don't think he is top level starting tight end worthy. And I know that makes it sound like I'm pretending Trey Burton's on the roster, and at the moment, part of me thinks you may need to. It's not that I've got any insider information. It's more that we saw the way this season went. He never looked healthy, and we still don't really know where the need for surgery came from in the first place. Now he's had 2 operations on it. I'm not going to try to levy any accusations. I'm more just going to say that the Bears probably ought to sign somebody at that spot and then also draft someone. Another really interesting position that I feel like people leave out a lot is cornerback. Because people talk about how we're obviously going to cut Prince Amukamara, right? But they don't really talk about who's going to step in and replace him. And a lot of people are really high on Kevin Tolliver. Feel free to be. I think that the Bears are likely going to need a little bit more depth there. That's not a high priority need, but it's definitely something we need to be thinking about, in my opinion. Safety is going to be interesting. Look, we could go through a lot of positions, like inside linebacker. Technically, we don't have any right now. But the idea that we wouldn't re-sign any of Kevin Pierre-Louis, Nick Kwiatkowski, Danny Trevathan, that feels a little far-fetched. But you get the idea. I think the biggest one is going to be quarterback. And as much as you may love Mitchell Trubisky, based on what we saw last season, we need a Ryan Tannehill to Mitch's Marcus Mariota. If Mitch takes that next step, great. I'm not against him playing well for the Chicago Bears. I'm against the Bears going into 2020 without a backup plan. And frankly, I'll just come out and say it, guys. If they go in with Trubisky as the presumed starter, as they have said, which I don't really believe them, by the way, but if they do go into 2020 as the presumed starter and Mitch has another 2019 season, I think this front office gets cleaned out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. That's a lot. Rob, I do want to come back to you after, but Blake, what are your thoughts on that? And some of the glaring holes on this Bears team.
Well, yeah, the Mitch Trubisky thing. I mean, Rob said it perfectly. If they go into next season with him as the starter and it starts off exactly like 2019 did, I've said it before. I mean, they're going to lose the locker room fast. I mean, this is a team that thinks that outside of that quarterback position that they can compete for a Super Bowl potentially. It was a generational defense being talked about just a year and a half ago. So, I mean, it's clearly a problem, but there's also not really an easy fix here. So I don't really know if Andy Dalton or Case Keenum or even Cam Newton steps in and makes them a Super Bowl contender. I mean, Cam Newton, if he's healthy, obviously that's a former MVP. You'd love to see that, but that's a guy that may be past that prime. I think he offers the most potential upside, but there just really isn't a key guy that you can lock into and say, all right, you bring this guy in, he's going to turn it around and he's going to be the Bears guy in 2020 going forward. But I kind of feel like that reflects a lot of different positions, and especially the tight end one for me. I think that's a big hole that we talked about. We see how important that position is in this kind of offense. And I think it's interesting to look at the rookies because, tight end is low key one of those positions that's kind of tough to adjust in the NFL. There's a lot of guys that really kind of don't hit the ground running. I can't really think of any tight ends. I mean, Gronk had an okay start, I'm pretty sure. But other than that, I mean, TJ Hawkinson, a guy you think of last year, drafted in the top 10, and he got off to a hot start, but he really struggled after that. And I mean, Eric Ebron, that's another guy you're talking about in free agency. That was a guy that was drafted really high and never really performed to his draft value. So, I mean, tight ends take a little bit to really develop and come into their own. And if that means taking a guy like Hopkins or Jared Pinkney or Hunter Bryant, like one of those guys, it might take them 2 or 3 years to really become that guy. So, it's going to be interesting to see what their production is. I think if they do get a guy in free agency, that would be their best bet. But then you think about that, it's like, okay, well, if they're going to throw a bunch of cash at Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, or Eric Ebron, you got to remember that they're already throwing a decent amount of money at Trey Burton too. So how much of our free agent salary cap are we going to allocate to the tight end position? It just seems kind of unreasonable to me. So that's another position I don't feel like there's really an easy fix, but you kind of have to draft a guy, I feel. And if you have to wait a year or two for him to get good, that's just kind of the price you pay. And hopefully we get a quarterback that can kind of hold them over until then. Because, I mean, we got wide receivers right now. I think David Montgomery's a solid player. Like, there's some pieces in place, but they got a lot of work to do this offseason, and nothing is really a guarantee for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems right off the bat with the hires that, they're making some changes. Rob, I'm interested to hear, you said, first of all, you don't believe that they're keeping Mitch Trubisky. They're committing to Mitch Trubisky right now for 2020. So who would you like to see come in as Mitch's backup or competition per se this offseason?
So I have to start out by saying something that might be a little bit hard to hear. So just take a deep breath and know that everything's going to be okay. I think that it is fair, if the Bears believe it, to say that maybe we take a year to restabilize ourselves because we bet everything on Mitchell Trubisky, and as we saw in 2019, it didn't work. And maybe he'll figure it out. If I could be really honest with you, I think there's a decent chance that somewhere around year 6, year 7 in the NFL, that Trubisky's going to get it together and turn into a very Alex Smith-like quarterback. And that's great for him. But just like Alex Smith, I doubt it'll be on the Bears because we don't have the time to wait for that. Again, it's not that I hate the kid. It's that his development curve doesn't fit the Bears' needs. And that's usually why players get cut, if you really think about it. But that's just my 2 cents. So what I think is, if you want to know who I would love to see join the Bears, it would be a healthy Alex Smith. I don't think he exists. So going then back from there, I would love in a perfect world to see the Bears get Derek Carr, but I don't think they can get him for cheap. I'm also not sure that the Raiders are selling him. And isn't that the problem with a lot of these quarterbacks like Cam Newton? Is he getting out of Carolina and is he healthy? We're not really even sure. So then you get down to this bottom rung. You set them all like Dalton, Keenum, Mariota. Mariota shares the same agent with Trubisky. That feels unlikely. I just end up landing on Andy Dalton. And that's not somebody that's going to excite you. But it is somebody that I have reasonable belief, if I take a look at his career, He's the only quarterback I can think of that might be willing to take a little bit less than what he's technically worth so that he could show out on a good team. That he would say, you know what? You guys run a very similar offense, RPO heavy, like read-based West Coast style offense to what I know. Sure. Let me go $8 million per year for 2 years. You guys sign me a right guard, sign me a tight end. Let's go make the playoffs. And if and at that point, the Bears would be, believe it or not, they would be just like the 2017 Chiefs with a bridge quarterback. The Chiefs had Alex Smith that ideally was going to make the playoffs. And if they won the Super Bowl, neat. But the goal was to make the playoffs, get guys developing, let players make plays. And then if they won the Super Bowl, that's neat. But we would set up to use our first round pick in 2021 on a quarterback we like. The whole reason that I say Andy Dalton, the whole reason I'm not saying Jake Fromm, the reason I'm not saying Eason and other guys like that is because I think the Bears draft capital might be better used on, and Blake, I'd love to hear what you think, an edge, a right guard, a tight end. There's tons of other positions the Bears have needs at instead of burning one on a quarterback that we could just get a better prospect in round 1 next year. A bridge makes sense. Nobody likes hearing that because it makes it sound like we're not trying to win a Super Bowl. But at some point, especially in a league that's quickly becoming a league where if you don't have a top 10 quarterback, you're not winning the Super Bowl. We need to find that top 10 quarterback. I don't know if he's available. And so with that in mind, I think we just look for somebody that's not going to hamstring us in the long term. And hey, maybe he'll win a couple games and push Trubisky while he's at it. Another really interesting one before I hand it off. If Josh Rosen really is available for nothing at all, that's a good one to take a look at because maybe you strike gold there. Considering that the Bears hired pretty much every quarterback's coach that they possibly could, which is a little tongue-in-cheek, but also kind of true. If you take a look at Bill Lazor, Matt Nagy, John DeFilippo, and Dave Ragone, this is the perfect environment to pull in a former disgraced first-round pick and say, look, kid, here's your environment. Show us what you got. And with him competing with Trubisky and a veteran fallback in Dalton, you have a quarterback room that at worst gives you average quarterbacking. And guys, we've talked about this all season. That is all we have ever wanted.
All we need. And average QB play. All we ever need and wanted.
And obviously that implies some positivity on Dalton, but I do think he's a pretty bare-bones average NFL starter that fits the offense. It's not the sexy choice, but it's a choice that might make sense for a team that's pretty tight up against the cap with deals like Trey Burton and whatnot that just need a year to go away. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting take. It's a hard one to take in. We'll just have to see how they bring it. I actually, I know a lot of people don't. I actually do really like Andy Dalton as well. I mean, we've seen him put up 400-something yards. He can do it. I'm interested to see what he can do with the weapons around him and a good defense. I mean, he's a very competent quarterback. He knows what he's doing. So,
and in particular, just to build off of one thing, from everything that I have seen, he's got a surprisingly reliable deep ball. And if you think back on all the ESPN top 10s you've seen on week to weeks at SportsCenter, you could think of tons of deep balls to A.J. Green, not John Ross. I mean, he's obviously had his struggles, but Marvin Jones. Andy Dalton can chuck the rock. It's that in the middle stuff, like he doesn't handle pressure very well, because I have watched him a little bit. And there are points of his quarterbacking performances where he's obviously pretty weak. But hey, if you told me that we get a more stable deep ball thrower, I don't mind, because that was a big reason the Bears missed out on points this year. If you go back and Mitch hits, let's say one more deep ball per game, a lot of those football games change because a lot of those could have been touchdowns.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Those single plays.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, one play. I mean, the amount of games we lost by how many, 2 points or whatever. It's
we don't need Piñeiro's kick in the Charger game if that ball hits Taylor Gabriel in the hands and he walks into the end zone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of these things that you look back and you say, if that one open throw was completed, the Rams, maybe you remember it, that ball that Mitch left a little bit inside that could have been rainbow outside and a touchdown. And then we lost the game, or we didn't lose the game by 7, but the game got away from us when we couldn't score points. And there was one against the Saints early, same situation. You hit that, the Bears are rolling. We did.
Was that Allen Robinson?
That was
Or
another Miller.
That was Miller.
Miller's
I think
been.
that was Miller.
Unfortunately, if I was Anthony Miller, I might not like Mitchell Trubisky because he's
Yeah,
had a career of missing Anthony Miller.
Yeah, and he puts him under the bus. Or Nagy puts him under the bus.
But the point is that I look back at Dalton, and again, his deep ball isn't perfect. Remember, the NFL average is like 40%, but it's better. It hits guys in the hands more. And if we could complete these shot plays, which is where Trubisky struggled in large part, I'll take more interceptions. Let's get the ball moving. I think Dalton can at least give you that. And if Mitch can't beat Dalton, he probably shouldn't start. I mean, I think people can agree with that.
Grossman's when the Grossman took the Bears to the Super Bowl, didn't he go 24-24?
The touchdown interceptions.
Yeah, didn't he go something crazy?
What I've heard there is, if I remember correctly, Rex Grossman set the current record in 2006 for best quarterback rating over an 8-game stretch, and immediately followed up with the worst quarterback rating over an 8-game stretch.
It was something crazy.
Another NFL record. It was ridiculous.
Yeah,
he was like an early MVP candidate.
Yeah,
after September,
and then they still won. They still went, whatever that season. I don't even remember. 13-3, I think they went that season.
Yeah.
Number 1 seed, and yeah, Jesus. I mean, I'll never forget. And obviously, we were not going to beat Peyton Manning ever because you can't win against Peyton Manning. That's some tough stuff. But all right, off
Brady begs to differ.
Yeah, well, not anymore. But Blake, how do you feel about the draft picks? Rob mentioned right guard, tight ends. What do you think here? Because I'm here thinking they sign a quarterback, they sign a tight end, and then they sign a linebacker and maybe an edge. And then I think it's going to come down to drafting early a safety or cornerback. So what are your overall thoughts on what they do early?
Yeah, I think cornerback is definitely a position they're going to target. I think the 2 picks in the second round are going to be either tight end. I feel like you pretty much have to. And then it's going to be in a guard or a corner. I think you pretty much have to. If Prince Amukamara is cut, which he's looking likely that he's going to be, you kind of have to, because Kevin Tolliver, like Rob said, he's a guy that you can have step in and start, but at the same time, you have to have a contingency plan, because even before last season, the Bears cornerback depth was kind of lacking, and even during the season, it was kind of a worry, because if Amukamara goes down and then Tolliver or Fuller goes down, then you've got pretty much Duke Shelley out there was pretty raw as a rookie, and he's got some developing to do. They just weren't there. I mean, Sherrick McManus would have had to step in, and he was serviceable, I guess, towards the end of the 2018 season, but that's really just an area that they need. Even if Amukamara is back, you need a guy that's a depth guy that can step in if somebody's injured, or if Amukamara, Fuller need a break or something, But the edge position really intrigues me, because Leonard Floyd is now in the last year of his player option. They're paying him $13 million this year. He's been a top 10 pick, but you haven't seen any of that kind of production. And even outside of him and Mack, where's the depth there? I mean, Aaron Lynch was horrible in 2019. I mean, led the league, it seemed like, in offsides penalties. And yeah, I mean, outside of that, Isaiah Irving, I mean, there's not really a lot of guys behind there. And, if there was a guy like Terrell Lewis from Alabama that fell to them in the second round, I think you have to scoop him. I don't think he's going to. I think he'll probably get drafted before then. But a guy that's a free agent, Marcus Golden, is a guy that pops out to me. I think he might get a little bit higher of a pay this go round. He made $3.5 million with the Giants in 2019, but he had 10 sacks. This year, he was looking like a stud in Arizona before that. I think he had some injury issues for a couple of years, but that could be a guy they potentially explore. But they definitely just need edge depth. You can never have too many pass rushers in the NFL, and you saw when Akeem Hicks went out this year that there was no one really able to step up to the plate. And even Khalil Mack, we just talked about it, lack of production there, and you definitely need more production in that department, because that's what leads to turnovers. Bad throws, forced throws, fumbles. Good pass rush kind of changes the whole landscape of your defense.
I'll tell you one thing that sticks out to me, Blake, for exactly the reasons you just said. That's part of why I think the Bears are going to go edge rusher first. I just keep thinking about it, and we all know that it's very hard to find edge rushers after about round 4. And so as the Bears go into a season where, if they take this bridge to 2021 model that I'm talking about, then you may have to mentally write Leonard Floyd out of the picture. Look, I like the guy as a player. Like, as an outside linebacker, and old school, you are a linebacker that plays outside, he's a good player. But as a pass rusher, let's let's just say he's unproductive and leave it at that. Plenty of
Yeah.
people have very hot feelings about him. I think this is a great chance to reload your cupboard. Go look for the guy who's going to play across Mac. Mac's going to be here. So you've just got to get a supplementary pass rusher that can feed off of those one-on-one blocks. That's not easy to find. People look for those every single year, and you end up with a lot more Vic Beasleys than you do Khalil Macks. But if the Bears could find somebody who could, like you're saying, stabilize that position for cheap, that would be just as important as finding a franchise quarterback, in my opinion, because you're able to get a lot more of that cap back. At least when it comes to the draft, that's part of why I'm starting to wonder, and I'll say this again, maybe I'm just the bearer of bad news today. Part of me wonders whether we're just going to have to accept that cornerback 2 might be weaker than we want it to be. Because we have the opportunity to tune the offense up to a place where we really like it. And if we draft an edge rusher, great. That's good. We could even load another cornerback in and around the 4th, 5th round. But that may be all we get. Because past a certain point, you're out of draft picks. And the Bears, like you're saying, Blake, I couldn't agree with you more. This is the year to get a tight end. I mean, you could almost book it. If they don't, I'll be surprised. Because they're looking for their Travis Kelce, their Zach Ertz. They'll even settle for Dallas Goedert at this point. Like, just get somebody in there. But edge is another position that it's extremely hard to fill. So if they do look to take a quarterback next year, then you got to start thinking about edge ASAP, and you can't sign them all because just like I'm sure Austin's going to talk about, if you end up with another Aaron Lynch 2019, that's just a waste of money.
Oh, God.
I mean, you can't do that. And you're going to end up with those because the unfortunate truth of a lot of this stuff, good edge rushers don't hit free agency. And if Leonard Floyd hits free agency, that statement still stands.
Yeah. It's interesting because tight end in the draft, I really like three guys and potentially 4 or 5. I want to see, some measurements, but there are some guys there. And if you don't, you got to, then you just plan to sign the guy in free agency. But I honestly think they go top tier tight end in free agency class. And I think they wait maybe a little bit to draft a tight end later. Maybe like you get lucky and Harrison Bryant is there a little later or, somewhat along those lines. But they could absolutely
Thaddeus
throw money
Moss.
at Austin Hooper. Thaddeus Moss, if he's around in the 5th or the 4th, they have 2 seconds and 2 fifths, 2 fourths.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about this draft too, is because they kind of have to hit on these second round guys.
They really do.
They're potentially looking at a 4th round compensatory pick, but I mean, if they don't, then you're waiting 3 rounds until the 5th, and I think they have 2 or 3 maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head, but those guys in the 5th round, there's certain players that obviously have been massive steals, but that doesn't happen almost ever. You got to get really lucky. The draft is a crapshoot, and after the first round, if we talk about first round, guys don't always hit in the first round. A small majority of guys there actually hit. So the Bears got their work cut out for them, and those second round picks are key because in an ideal world, those guys are both contributors from day one on offense, defense, wherever they go.
Yeah, and it's important to look at that too. And the tight end thing is scary. Like, do they take a chance at tight end in the second round when second round tight ends sometimes don't work? But here's the thing that I talked to Brad Spielberger or Brad Over the Cap. We talked about this in the first episode of this miniseries. And, the Bears, the market is going to be set this year in terms of tight ends, but it's not going to be anywhere close to what it's going to be next year. And I really think they take a shot at Hunter Henry. They take a shot at Austin Hooper, throw big money at him, double digits, make him the highest paid tight end, get him signed for 4 or 5 years. And that market's set. And then George Kittle next year is going to set the market at like 17 million a year or something insane. So I think the Bears, if they were smart, they'd go and throw big money, quote unquote, at the tight. It's not as nearly as much as you throw other positions, but you make Austin Hooper the highest paid tight end and get him locked up before George Kittle makes that record breaking deal next year.
There's one other position we haven't talked about that when it comes to this draft, and I got to tell you all, about everything I'm about to say is secondhand from the guy who I trust most when it comes to draft stuff, EJ Snyder, who we at Windy City have down at the Senior Bowl. So he's covering that, and I'll recoup with him later. But one position that he talked about when it comes to this draft specifically, because as I'm sure y'all know, every draft class has its advantages and its disadvantages. The word that I have heard when describing this year's wide receiver class is generational. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that it's a second round pick, because even if we picked like a true top flight receiver in the second round, that's great, but we probably have other positional needs. I don't know. You could sell me on it if you told me we were getting a guy that would go number 15 any other year at 43, but we'll get there. The point is, we could see a surprise receiver pick around the 4th, 5th round where we get a guy who should be a second rounder. And I know we all heard that about Riley Ridley. And who knows, maybe Riley can rise up and take that. But from the way I have heard this described, if we're going to cut Taylor Gabriel, which a lot of us agree is almost a given, that means that we're going to have Anthony Miller, who, while I love his talent, he's one of the first guys I broke down. He is inconsistent, and he's going through a second shoulder surgery, or maybe he recently avoided it, but I can't quite remember. The point is that he hasn't turned out to be the dominator that we want. He can, but he's not necessarily going to. And then Allen Robinson, really good receiver. Obviously, we could spend a whole podcast just singing Robinson's praises. But if you could get in this class a way lower round than he should be, very talented receiver, that's the kind of stuff that makes teams good in the long term. Could be something to watch, because I know nobody's projecting a wideout to the Bears, but this class, you might as well project a wideout to anybody as long as they're looking.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we could always use weapons, and if we can steal someone, that'd be great. I mean, Blake, wide receiver, what do you think?
I mean, I'd be cool with it just because, like Rob said, it's a really deep class. Generational it's pretty strong, but I'll take EJ's word for it. I mean, he definitely knows more about it than I do, but there is a lot of guys. I don't know who exactly we'd be looking at potentially in a 4th or 5th round pick, but I definitely would be okay with it. Bears are in no position to be picking over offensive players right now. I was thinking along the lines of like a KJ Hill, but I think he'll get drafted before the 4th.
Yeah, he'll go. His combine. I think he's going to kill the hot combine.
Yeah,
and go
I mean, he's a really good player. So I mean, I'm always open to it, just because, like I said, Bears are in no position to be picky with offensive talent. They could use whoever, wherever, as long as it helps get this offense going in the right direction. Because they were in the bottom 5 of the league last year.
Yeah.
Anybody that can come in and help them right away is good in my book.
And it could even all shake out in the position where I talked about a 4th rounder that might have a second rounder's talent, but it could also be another Tyler Lockett situation where there's just, I'll throw a guy out there that I watched because he's from my alma mater, Baylor University. Denzel Mims, as a wide receiver, has a lot of the tools you want. He is, I believe his weigh-in was 206 pounds at 6'2", and he's got really quick speed. He's the kind of guy that can take a slant all the way to the house. You can say whatever you want about Big 12 defenses. I bet you could get this guy in the 6th or the 7th. He should be a 4th rounder, but he won't be this year because that's the kind of draft we're looking at. And that makes things tantalizing when you get around round 5 or 6. Because again, like you just said, Blake, if you're getting a 3rd round talent in the 6th or 7th round, that could be huge. That could be how you turn the 7th round, I guess you could almost call them priority UDFA-like picks, into a reliable weapon. Tyler Lockett was a 7th rounder once, and I'm not about to sit here and demand Pace hit on one, but this would be a huge year for the Bears to find somebody for not much. If we could get another like Eddie Jackson value, and I know I'm talking about one of the best draft picks I've ever seen the Bears make, talking about one of the best safeties in the league in the 4th round. I know I'm going over my time here, but it's something to think about because this draft could shake out in so many different ways, and it does all depend on how we approach free agency. And I just wish I could be a fly on the wall in Halas Hall right now.
Yeah, and
that's the
Rob,
crazy thing too, is because all these holes still need to be filled by free agency. Because like the draft landscape completely changes after free agency. The offseason in the NFL is so much fun. This is the kind of stuff you live for. I mean, the season's great and all, but like that first day of the free agency when you're just, waiting to hear the news and the draft and all that, this is like where championship teams are built right now. So this is kind of like, this is where you can kind of sell yourself on the hope as a fan. And that's what makes this kind of stuff so much fun.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest off seasons in Chicago Bears history for sure. Lots of decisions to be made, jobs to be saved. Let's see if the Bears can do it. Let's close this thing out. Rob and Blake, give me your overall thoughts on this offseason and how you want it to pan out before the 2020. And then give me something that you would rather do than watch the Pro Bowl this weekend.
Okay, I'll start. So when it comes to this offseason, last season, we, just like the Bears, and part of me blames Matt Nagy a little bit for this. This is my number one criticism. We all thought we were great. Like fans to players, everybody. And so when the Bears didn't do much, we weren't too upset because we were kind of just, I mean, as soon as the double doink hit the ground, we were ready for 2019. And this offseason, I expect much more commotion. We're going to see Ryan Pace, I think, test the limits of what the cap will allow him to do, especially as we set up for a 2020 season that should see a restructuring. And I would expect to see the Bears truly push all their, push right up next to the cap. Again, this could be a bridge year. This could be an all-in year. If a quarterback, I'm going to say a guy's name that if he came to the Bears, I would go nuts. If Drew Brees landed on Chicago in a 2-year deal, 1 year guaranteed, you're looking at the perfect competitive bridge situation. But it has to happen. And like Blake said, this free agency period is just going to go, it's going to be bananas because if the Bears get the right guys, they become a Super Bowl team. If they get some guys, they become a playoff team. And if they get no guys, we've got serious problems. But with the way that HaHa Clinton Dix and other free agents spoke of the Bears culture, I've got high hopes that if they send that signal that they are competing at quarterback, a lot of people around the league will at least take notice. And when it comes to what I'd rather do than the Pro Bowl, I may watch the game. But if I don't, I will be working on my latest project that I can't wait to debut. I am, again, finally starting to kick stuff and keep writing, start recording soon, and I'm excited to just keep putting more videos out and get off of week-to-week content and more on to deep dives on very specific topics. I have a feeling Bears fans will be surprised at what I've got in store.
Wow, that's quite the teaser. Good luck topping that one, Blake. Now I just want to watch Rob's video that he's going to make soon.
Yeah, I got no real big projects like that coming up, but this offseason, it's going to be key because this is the make or break for Ryan Pace. I don't know if it is for Matt Nagy, just because I just have this gut feeling that ownership would be willing to give him a chance to take on a new quarterback, take on his guy to kind of fully give us the scope of what he wants this offense to be. But I mean, for Ryan Pace, I mean, this is it. I feel that he is 100% on the hot seat, and if there aren't any results, or if he doesn't bring anybody in for a quarterback competition and Trubisky doesn't hit, then he is the guy that has to be really held accountable there. Rob said it. If they don't bring in quarterback competition and they go in with Trubisky and re-sign Chase Daniel or some other guy to be the backup, like a Marcus Mariota or anything, that would be such a depressing sign to me. Because, I mean, you saw everything that we saw last year with Mitch Trubisky. There were so many moments where he just proved that he just did not have it in him as of right now. Obviously, he could in the future, but to really, truly believe in your heart that that's your guy and to totally just do your team a disservice by not even bringing anybody in to compete, that would just hurt the soul of the team. It would hurt the soul of the fan base. And I think addressing that has to be a key for Ryan Pace.
What would you? Are you going to watch the Pro Bowl? Or are you going to be doing something else?
The Pro Bowl. I mean, I might have it on. I don't know if I'm going to watch it much. I'll probably rather sleep. I'd probably rather try and fix my stupid laptop for like 3 hours that won't turn on. Maybe try and fix my headphones that my dogs hate. That's why I wasn't on the other interview. I don't know if we mentioned that on the podcast. But I was supposed to be on that interview with Bobby Peters.
Episode 2 last week is supposed to be on it. And Blake's laptop broke and his dog ate his headphones right beforehand. It was great timing.
Yeah. Classic dog ate your headphones.
Before I was hopping on.
I know, classic.
Oh, yeah, like literally ripped one of the sides off of him. So, it was a great night. Really good night here.
All right. So, guys, me basically, it's a bottom line. It's a big offseason. It's a huge offseason for Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, Mitch Trubisky. Are they going to roll the dice with Trubisky one more time? If they do, are they going to give him a leash similar to Mariota or Mike Glennon 2 years ago? What are they going to do? Who are they going to bring in? I'm excited to see. Training camp's probably going to be fun again, as long as they bring in the right guys and draft some
if you
studs.
can get in.
Oh yeah,
over at Halas Hall now.
Wait, we're House Hall Brawl. We should be. Excuse me.
Yeah, we get free VIP.
Yeah, they better let us say, God damn. But so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Rob, as always, love having you on. We'll have you again on in a couple of weeks for season 2. We'll talk about some more draft stuff and see what the Bears are looking into. But appreciate you coming on. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz. He's got a new project coming out. Definitely stay tuned for that later this week. I think this weekend he said. So get ready for that. And other than that, we'll catch you guys next week for the last mini-series before season 2 of the House Hall Brawl. Bear down, go Bears. And have fun, I guess, watching the Pro Bowl.
Bear down, everybody.
Bears.